I'm Julia Davis, a film major who stumbled into the business world with no experience in 2006. I was able to fail enough to learn how to run a seven-figure business and have provided consulting services to over 200 individually owned companies. Through this podcast, I hope to provide some perspective on the growth and grit it takes to accomplish big goals and share some hard lessons I've had to learn along the way. Welcome back to the Growth and Grit podcast, where we have real conversations with leaders, entrepreneurs, and change makers who prove that success isn't built by avoiding challenges, but growing through them. And today's guest is someone who is redefining what leadership looks like. Wendy Paige Sterling is an intuitive business mentor, an executive coach, and the founder of the new EI, which is energetic intelligence. And after spending decades in high-performing sales teams, corporate positions, Wendy made a decision to leave that behind and build her own business on intuition and purpose. And today, she helps many people align their business goals and find who they truly are. And in this episode, we're going to dive into exactly what that means about leading with confidence and finding that new EI, and exploring how many high achievers can do this with the right coaching and training. So thank you so much for joining me on here, Wendy.
Oh gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
Me too. Okay, so you are so fascinating to me. When I met you in Phoenix, and I was
Thank
like,
you.
I feel like I've known you forever. Like I walked, I was like, I know you from somewhere. Where do I know you? And you're like, I don't know, but um, and then I realized you were like an intuitive business coach. And I was like drawn to you because I was kind of at this crossroads of my life and career, and you really helped me figure out what was stopping me from getting to where I needed to go mentally, which is such a gift. So can you kind of expand on what you do? Because people might not understand like what an intuitive business coach is, or, what I'm even talking about. So can you kind of go into that?
Yes, I will do my best, but as you know, being in my presence is way greater, even if it's on a Zoom. But nonetheless, yeah. So, I mean, in a nutshell, what I support my clients, and honestly, it's really about empowering my clients to deepen their level of trust of their intuition in those higher stake decision moments. So many of us have, mastered the art of, what I call the old EI, which is emotional intelligence. And that gets us to a certain place, right? It allowed me to build a seven-figure business, and I'm eternally grateful for that. However, there comes a point where we all hit up against a new ceiling, a new block that we can't figure out why we can't break through. And we, throw everything at it that we've learned to date, but yet nothing we're doing is breaking us through. And so that's where the new EI comes in, which is all about energetic intelligence. And so it's really hard to throw old ideas at something new that requires a new energetic version of you to step into in order to make that reality come to fruition. And so the work that I do with my clients is really around helping to support their inner intelligence, that inner energetic recalibration, so that they can align their inner energy with the outer vision and dream that they actually want to create as a reality. And when I'm able to support my clients in doing that, what ends up happening is they accelerate the results that they are seeking to have. So, I've had clients say to me, my God, I thought this was going to take me 5 years, and you helped me do this in less than one. And so ultimately, what that supports my clients in doing is collapsing the timeline and being able to make decisions with more clarity and confidence, which then turns into creating more wealth for themselves in a shorter period of time. And ultimately, for me, what my passion is to allow them to have more freedom and peace in their life, which is what we all want. And to me, that's success.
That's awesome. And I think that what's so fascinating about what you do is you have this like gift of like guided meditation almost, where you go deep into somebody's psyche and try to figure out, okay, what is the actual root of the issue that's stopping them from achieving success? So can you explain that a little bit? Because I feel like that is so unique and fascinating to me that you can kind of like dig in there and figure it out. But it's also, yeah, it's just I don't even know how to describe it. It's like so unique. Did you know that you had that gift, or like when did you realize that you could do that?
Well, I will do my best to describe it. It's felt, and, everybody listening, if you ever wanna come and experience it, I do a free workshop every single month, so all you need to do is get yourself in that room and you can experience it, but yes, I've always had this gift. So I was born deeply intuitive and psychic, but like so many other women, I learned to ignore it. I'll never forget the day I came home and told my mom all about, this man that I met on the bench at my all girls private school that I went to, right? And she just like freaked out. And she thought I had a very active imagination. And, growing up in, an immigrant family, it was all about fitting in. And so, I was anything but that. I was a disruptor. So I started becoming worried that my family was going to abandon me, that I wouldn't be loved if I didn't fit into the version of me that they wanted. And so I spent the next 4 decades shifting myself kind of, or I should say disconnecting myself from that. Even though it was still there, I quieted the volume on it. And instead, I started people pleasing, chasing external validation, living the life and the version of Wendy that everybody else saw me to have. And it really wasn't until about a decade ago that I was, hit by the hit upside the head by a 2 by 4, not literally, but figuratively by the universe, where it actually forced me to reconnect with myself and to unwaveringly trust my intuition again, to lead from that place. And eventually I realized that this wasn't just a personal gift, it was actually something that I meant to give and to gift and to support, millions of others is really my goal, and to teach my clients and as many women as possible how it is that they too can reclaim. And honestly, it's remembering that inner intuitive intelligence that is going to support them in a much easier way and create deeper alignment with themselves and the universe. And so the meditations that I go into, so I am a certified life coach, I'm a level 3 Reiki practitioner, I'm an advanced theta healer, I'm an advanced sound healer. And so all these modalities that I have been trained in have helped me to sort of, amp up my own inner intuitive abilities to support my clients. And so when my clients come to me, many times, and the majority of the work that I do, especially with my private clients and also in my containers, is I will guide everybody into a visualization. So I tap into the energy of the room of the people that are there. By coming in, you're giving me permission to do that. And, I allow God, I allow spirit to really guide me in what it is that's going to serve everybody. So the visualization is meant to be descriptive. It's meant to tap into chakras. It's meant to tap into, I've done ones where we've gone back and, looked at future versions of ourselves, inner child, future, just future envisioning of versions of yourself. So it just depends on sort of what the intention is that we set in the room so that I can most easily guide my clients to achieve that intention and ultimately to unlock something within them that enables them to access a part of themselves that they've had a lot of trouble getting in touch with. And once that unlocks, it just floods them with, in a good way, with the information that they have been seeking. And typically it's a baby step, right? Because if it's going from A to Z, it's not going to stick, but it's really giving them the gift of an A to B step so that they can feel the momentum and feel the progression of them moving forward with a decision or something that they are curious about in their life.
And yeah, and a lot of the work that you talk about just now is intuition based, right? So
Yes.
you're following the feelings in your body and things like that. In the industry that we're in, a lot of the world and everything is based on data and strategy and logic and non-emotional, right? It's like, hey, do not lead from emotional standpoint. And I don't think you're talking about less necessarily leading from emotion, but you're talking about leading from intuition. And I think there's a confusion there between like fear and
Right.
intuition.
Right.
How do you know if somebody's making a decision based on fear or emotional, you know, scenario, or if they're making a decision based on an intuitive feeling? Like, how can you discern that?
Yeah. That's a great question. I get this all the time. So, the easiest way is to recall a time where where you said, I think everybody can do this who's listening, right? Recall a time where you said yes to something when you then a second later went, oh crap, I should have said no. That feeling of saying yes, even when you wanted to say no, is typically where fear, doubt, judgment, resentment lives in your body. And now think of another time where you just said yes, and it was like, yes, yes, yes. And I want you to think of a time where you got that like nudge of like, oh, absolutely not. And maybe you didn't speak it, but you knew it and you felt it in your body. That's your intuition. And so, like for me, for example, when my intuition speaks to me, it is in my gut, solar plexus area, and it like vibrates up to my heart. That's the best way that I can describe my own experience. And when I feel fear, it's typically in my throat and my chest area. And so, part of why we are so disconnected is because we don't gift ourselves with what I call the pause and the slowdown. So, really just giving yourself the opportunity to take a breath, take a beat, and really tap in and go, wait a second, what is in alignment for me? What really is my answer? What really is my truth that I want to lead with? And the biggest problem is that most people confuse intuition with emotion, and they are completely different, right? Emotion is based on a past experience, which is typically where fear comes in, versus intuition is going to feel calm. It's going to feel neutral. It's going to feel really clear without any evidence whatsoever. And the challenge is that if most of us are walking around life living with a nervous system that is constantly dysregulated, your fear is going to speak louder to you than your intuition. And that is why I teach my clients about their intuition, which I call their energetic intelligence, because it's about learning how to regulate your nervous system so that you can recognize your body signals and distinguish your fear from that intuitive knowing. And here's the thing, and to answer the first part of your question, it's not that you don't need a strategy. Any strategy is going to work for any of you. Like, hands down, it will work. The reason, and data, I love data, like, love data. But here's the thing is that if your intuition is telling you that a certain strategy doesn't work for you, but you're using it anyway, that tells me that no strategy, that strategy, I should say, isn't in alignment with what's in your highest and best. Your intuition is what makes the data and the strategy work harder. So it's not an either or, it's a both and. And what I always say is that your EI, your energetic intelligence, is actually the data that AI will never be able to replace, because there's a certain piece. Like, as women, we have such a gift. Like, the gift of our inner intuition is something that we don't use enough. And it's not a matter of, oh, I don't need a strategy, I'll just go meditate today. No, that is not how this works. You need to have a strategy, but you need to understand, like, how do I make that strategy work for me based on who I am, what it is that I'm seeking to accomplish, what is my intention on the other side of this? And it's about marrying the two together so that you can lead from that deeper inner wisdom. And from that place, remember, you're integrating in the data and the strategy.
Right. So if you have the data and the strategy and you have the EI, that gives you the clearest pathway to make the best decision possible for
Correct.
your highest and best self, right?
Correct.
That's what I kind of got out of that.
Correct.
Um, and how a lot of people listening to this might be working and doing careers that are high intensity, right? That are requiring a lot of obstacle management, challenges on a daily basis, things that they're learning that are brand new. Running a business and learning how to run a business are very stressful tasks to take on. How do you regulate your nervous system when you're moving at a speed that is beyond what you're used to?
I mean, you're speaking to the choir. how do you regulate? It's one foot in front of the other. I mean, candidly, like, listen, you guys, I spent 20 years in corporate America. I worked in ad sales. I worked for some of the most demanding CROs and CMOs out there in the women's lifestyle space. And I remember being in corporate and I mean, I was dysregulated on a daily basis. Every day I walked into work, I was judged by a number. I worked in ad sales, right? So it was like you're only as good as your last sale,
Right.
not your next,
Truly.
right? But your last sale. And I really had to spend some time I mean, you really need to spend some time gifting yourself with little moments of recognizing what your response is and how it is that you, I'll say, react when you are in a dysregulated state. So if you find yourself in a reactive mode, then you know that you are dysregulated versus when you are actually feeling grounded, things feel a little bit slower and you are making decisions that feel a little bit less chaotic, that's when you're in a place of, oh, I'm actually responding from my highest and best. And I think that as high achievers, we spend so much time chasing external validation. We think that we'll be rewarded for speed. We think that, our titles, I mean, God knows I was obsessed with my titles as I was working through corporate America. But I think that the reason a lot of us are dysregulated is because we're seeking something outside of us. And the regulation comes when you connect back in with who it is that you are. And ultimately, it's about connecting back in with your own identity. I mean, I think the hardest identity to let go of was, the version of me who believed that my worth came from putting everybody else first, including work. And I was a constant people pleaser. And I measured my value by how much I produced and how much I gave and how needed I was, and my title and my paycheck that came in every month and the commission check that I got on top of it. And letting go of that identity about a decade ago when I transitioned out of corporate and became an entrepreneur was terrifying, absolutely terrifying, because it meant that I had to trust myself to know that I was capable without that external validation attached to it. And what I can say is that for those of you who are feeling dysregulated, a lot of times that means that like your heart's beating really fast, or you feel shortness of breath, or you're that person who has back to back to back to back to back to back to back on your calendar, that's a signal that you are not leading from a regulated place. I mean, I make sure I have 30 minutes between appointments, no matter what, because number one, let's be real, a lot of our calls go a little bit over. And you get to build in time for you to take a breath. Reality check, everyone. No one's going to hand you time and be like, oh, go take some time for yourself. No, you've got to use your voice and ask for it. And I think that nowadays, what's most important, because we're all surrounded by nothing but stress and unexpected things happen. My dad was in the hospital 3 weeks ago, and there was no dysregulation because I was like, okay, I'm just going to move everything. I'm going to fly up north and it's going to be fine. But this is what ends up happening is that we get dysregulated because we're seeking certainty. And uncertainty is actually, you know, the place that you're in is uncertainty. And that's the place where you have the power to actually recalibrate your energy to show up and lead from a place that feels most authentic. And so I would really invite everybody to just start again noticing in your body what happens when you get into these higher stress situations. And if you can build in even just a 30-second practice of breathing and just catching your breath and closing your eyes and just focusing on your breath, that is the fastest way to get back into your body and out of your head. Long answer, but
That's
that's
really good. Yeah, that's really good advice. Is just to practice breathing or even meditation, like listen to a meditation.
yeah.
Um, is so helpful. And I think people don't do that enough because they're like, oh, it's a waste of time, but it's not if it gets you back to a place of better decision making and more focus and all the things that you need to be. What advice would you have for somebody whose identity is totally wrapped up in their career currently, where they their identity is their career and they don't even know who they are outside of it.
I would invite you to it may not be a popular opinion, but I would invite you to take a day off, and I would invite you to play in the sense of what is something that you used to do as a child that brought you so much joy that you can go allow yourself to go do right now? So, for example, for me, like my favorite thing to do is I love being in nature. Like when I go outside, like I reset. And it can be as simple as, taking the dog on either an extra walk or like, his first walk of the day.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's taking a drive out to the beach and clearing my morning and moving things that are less urgent and taking care of myself. And I think that we, and I'm a mom, guys. I'm a stepmom. I'm a mom. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a daughter. I wear a lot of hats throughout the day. And the quickest way for you to remove the hat, and the hats that you carry on a daily basis is really just taking care of yourself. Like, and I am not great at this. Like, let me just be crystal clear. Like, my coach has to remind me, like, did you remember to like go take care of yourself? And I'm like, "Oh, crap, you're right, I need." And then, I'll say that I did, and she's like that, it's like, "Oh, I quickly went and I, like, did a 10-minute walk." And she's like, "No, half a day at a minimum, you need to go like, nourish yourself, put the phone away, disconnect, tell everybody to not bother you for, for 5 minutes," well, more like 3 hours, and just to disconnect because, again, like, I spent so much of my life waiting for people to tell me that it was okay to go do that, and I'm way better than I used to be, and I do bake in 1 day a month, I have a beach day. I live in Los Angeles, I drive out to Malibu, I take, like, a 3-mile walk, I just sit and I journal at the beach, and I give myself 3 hours to just sit and be, and just to allow myself to breathe, and I think that because of the pace that we all work at, we don't carve out that time, and it's so important because guess what happens every time after I get back? I take pages of notes, of downloads, of ideas, of, things to delegate to my VA. And I come back and all of a sudden I just feel rejuvenated. I feel recalibrated. I feel like I work 10 times faster than I did before I had allowed myself to go, check out and do some things for myself. But I think that, what ends up happening is if you don't do that, guess what the universe does? Well, many of you get sick. Many of you get like your tech broke. You lost a big document that you have been working on forever, right? So these, what I'll term them is like we have the universe hands us breakdowns because you're not putting this into your schedule. So the universe is going to essentially be like, well, you're not listening. So I'm going to actually make sure that you don't have a choice and you're actually going to listen. And for us high achievers, that is exactly how it happens. It happens for every single one of my clients. And so I always tell them that like the breakdowns happen before the major breakthroughs. But if you're not building in that time to allow yourself to process, then you're just delaying the results that you want because they'll come a lot faster when you nourish yourself.
Yeah. I I think anyone who runs a business is for sure guilty of taking almost 0 personal time
Yep.
because it's just you're just going, 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 knowing that you have to perform for your people and be a great leader and lead by example and do all these things. And I think you're an even better leader when you're more focused or when you're when you do that, when you take just a 3-hour break or a half a day and say, okay, once a month, half a day, I'm going to spend just game planning my life over and resetting my goals and making sure I know what my intentions are, my vision for the next 30 days instead of just working at a level 10 and then looking back and saying, I don't even feel like I accomplished anything because I was just working at a pace that I don't even remember. I remember being that way where I would like a week would pass and I was like wouldn't even have any recollection of like the past week. I was like, I don't even remember what I ate for lunch on Wednesday. Like I have no idea what even happened because I was just moving at a speed that was like unretainable, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I'll even say this, like, I was just at a 5-day event in Chicago, and I mean, kid you not, 9 AM, 9 PM, and then a group of us, like, a lot of us would go hang out, network, and chill after, right? So I was going from 9 AM to midnight, 5 days in a row, and anytime I felt my body just, like, overwhelmed, I would just leave the room, I would walk outside of the hotel, find the sunshine, and park myself there and literally just do like a 5-minute meditation, get my feet in the grass, because thank God there was some there. And then I would put my shoes back on, walk back inside the conference room, right?
Mhm.
And like my point is, it doesn't have to be a lot necessarily, but every day it doesn't have to be a lot. But I would say once a month, if you can just let yourself have a me day. And
Yeah.
I would even challenge what you said. And no, don't focus on goals. Don't focus on anything. Just focus on nourishing you. Go get a facial, go get a manicure, go take a long walk, go on a bike ride, go hiking, like sit in your backyard in the sun for, and pretend like you're on vacation. Like just something that distances you from the people that need you, life and business, so that you can come back to yourself. It's really hard. Trust me, I get it. Like and I'm not saying that there aren't seasons where, you need to, you know, buckle down and like really focus and do all that. But I'll tell you, the focus will happen a lot faster when you allow yourself the opportunity to literally disconnect from it all and just be. And when you recognize your head going back into decisions and questions and all this stuff, just stop yourself and say, "No, not right now. Thank you. Please leave." And then just go back in if you need to put music on, like whatever it is, but just to let yourself disconnect. Like I even met a woman at this event and I had asked her, I'm like, how do you like kind of reconnect with your body and how do you like what's like a practice that you do? And she was like, music. She's like, I love music. Like music instantly changes my mood. And I think so many people can relate to that. And, like anytime I get on a Zoom or anytime I do a presentation, I put on music to like get myself pumped and to get myself like back into my body so that I can, shine and lead and speak from my best and most highest place. And so, it's that kind of a practice that I'm inviting everybody to really think about what it is that is going to allow them to just disconnect, just be with yourself, and to really make an effort to not let business or other people's needs filter in.
I felt as though I could really do this more when I was in my late 30s, early 40s, right? I really was more hyper aware of how my intuition should be the one in charge and not
Mhm.
like all my thoughts based on experiences and excuses and all these other things in my head. And some of the people listening to this call are not there. They're in their early 20s, right? And they're just at the beginning of their business journey. What advice would you have for them, the young entrepreneur that might be so green in this space? But if they could adopt this and learn this early, I think it would change the game for their leadership ability. What have you seen with that, and what could they do, like, today to be able to implement some skills towards the direction of that?
Yeah, I mean, God, if I could go back and tell my 25-year-old self, I mean, I always say, like, if I knew what I knew now, back then, I can't even fathom the career trajectory spike that I would have had. And I had a pretty steep spike to begin with, right? And so I would say to all of you that are listening is, I, okay, here's what this is the intuition coming in. Here's a thing that I would say, and what I'm hearing is going to support everybody listening today, is to create boundaries around you and your time. And that is something I never had. I was on call 24/7. I answered client messages at 8 o'clock at night. I would respond to my boss at 5 o'clock in the morning. Like all hours of the day, on the weekends, everything that I would be doing. And what I found is that by not having boundaries, I realized that that was why I was so deeply disconnected from myself. because I wasn't prioritizing myself, because I wasn't putting boundaries around who I was. And that was not just at work, it was also with my family, right? Like I lived for my children, I lived for my husband, and I lived for my business. And I was exhausted and I was burned out and I was resentful and I was angry for 2 decades. Like, totally candidly, I was angry. And the second I started putting boundaries into effect, where let me just explain, boundaries are guidelines and rules and limitations that you put into place that let other people know how it is safe for them to interact with you. It's that dirty dancing metaphor, right? Like, where this is my dance space, this is your dance space. And it lets other people know how it is that they can interact with you in a way that's going to create deeper connection. It's going to create respect, and it's going to create a new energetic dynamic that is going to accelerate your ability to create results. And what I realized is that I had none of that, nothing. And the second I started putting boundaries into place, all of a sudden, I started seeing how I was accelerating, my business. I was accelerating my wealth. I was finding all of these clients. I was, getting a ton of referrals. All these things just started being implemented. And I think that when we're younger, we're like, oh, we have all this time. And, I'm not saying that not, some of you listening, you might be married, some of you may even have kids, but putting boundaries into place sooner than later is going to be an absolute game changer. And the easiest boundary, okay, I'm going to tell you the easiest yet hardest boundary that you can start implementing today is saying no. No is a complete sentence. No protects your energy, it protects your time, it protects your space. And when you have those boundaries clearly in place, what you're able to do is really prioritize yourself, but also envision and see how it is that you're able to create everything that it is that you desire. And so that's the biggest piece of advice that honestly I would go back and give myself.
That's great advice. Yeah, and say no to things that just don't support your goal and what you want to accomplish.
Right.
And is there a checklist that you go through in your head before you say no? Like, is there something that you think about? What is it?
So the checklist is checking in with my body.
Okay.
It's my practice, right? So, um, you know, I mean, I teach it as a 7-step method in a 30-day container that I run on a monthly basis, and it's my discern method. And so, kind of the first 2 steps that I think, I like to break it down so that everybody can practice and get best at the first 2 before we move on. But the first one is it's an acronym. So the D is discern, is the D, sorry. Discern is the 7-step as oh my God, I can't even speak right now.
It's the acronym, right?
Is the acronym. Discern is the acronym. So the D is all about decoding your signal within, right? So when somebody asks you a question and all of a sudden you're like, God, I really want to say no. And then you're like, oh, but I should say yes. And if I say yes, then, oh, maybe this will get me goodwill, or, oh, they'll be so, thrilled and it's going to help them. Right. So, like, in that process that I just did, it's kind of like slow it down for yourself and just go, okay, my body and my gut said it's a hell no. But then all of a sudden I realize my head is telling me like, "Oh, but you should." And then all of a sudden, all of this, story starts creeping in. And so what I would tell you is just to like really go inside and start paying attention around what it is that's coming up within your body. And sometimes sometimes we also forget that we get to ask for more time to make a decision, right? We're the only ones who put pressure on ourselves that, oh, I got to give them an answer right now, right? And if you notice that you're in a like, your intuition saying no, your head saying yes, and you're in this tug of war inside of your head, all you have to simply say is, you know what? I'd love some more time to think about this. When can I get back to you by? And asking, right? Like, again, another piece of advice I wish I did in my 20s, right? And so that D in the discern in the decoding, and then the I is all about initiating, the check within your body, right? And so gifting yourself with some space to be able to discern what it is that is truly in your best and deepest alignment. Um, it's interesting. And I'll share something with if it's okay. And
Yeah, of course.
um, at this event that I was at, I had a connection with a woman who we met, and we were like in this vibe, and she started telling me all about like this, collaborative book that she's writing, and she's looking for authors, and I was like cheering her on. I was like, "Oh my god, that's going to be so powerful," and blah blah blah. And then the next day, she's texting me like, "I'm so excited you want to be in my book." And we're doing a powwow at the end of the session today. And I'm like, "Wait, what? Like I never said I was interested in being a part of this book, right?" And I had a moment of like, "Oh my god, what did I do? What did I say?" And I started getting in my head. And I was like, "No." Like, I literally was like, "I am not even responding to this right now," because I'm like, I'm in my head too much right now, and I really need to get clear on, like, this is an absolute no, like, I'm not doing this. And I was like, and nor did I say I was doing this, right? But I had that moment, and then I, like, took an hour, and then I wrote her a response, and I just said, "I love what you're doing. I'm so incredibly excited for how you're giving voice to all these women that are gonna participate." And I said, "If I said something that you misunderstood, I'd like to just clarify that I am not interested in being an author. However, I'm more than happy to support when the book comes out and to share it with my audience." Right? So it's like I went from like "Oh crap, hell no, like,
Right.
don't be rude, Wendy." And I turned it into this moment of, "Oh, I remember I communicated my excitement and I am excited about this. So how can I support but still be a no?" Right? So
Right,
like
right, right.
that's kind of the process.
Yeah, I think that's great too, giving yourself just a minute of clarity instead of just responding just a knee-jerk response, which I think comes with maturity too. I know in my early
Yes.
20s, I would just knee-jerk responses all day and send emails
Yes.
that I would, like, wish I could unsend, you know?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
You're like, "Ooh, I shouldn't feel that."
Yeah.
Oh, crap, can't take that back. Now you can actually, like, unsend an email, which is unbelievable. But I do think that
Well, now you can.
I
Back then,
know,
we'll
I
couldn't.
know.
It's
Where
so
was that?
absurd.
Or where was that 20 years ago, right? Um, but I agree with you. I think that sometimes and you kinda, like, trick yourself. You're like, "Did I say yes to this?" Like,
Totally.
and you're in your head about it, and you can just rewind and say, "You know what? Let me take a minute to really think about a better way to respond to this." Even in an employee situation, right, where you're managing people and someone shoots something at you, and your initial gut response, is probably not the best.
Yeah.
Just tabling it until you can have a clear-headed response that makes sense. Like, that is such a good tip for people listening
Yeah.
to this because it takes practice to do that, but pausing, I know you talk a lot about the pause
Yeah.
and just really going inside. But this is incredible, Wendy, and thank you so much for being on the podcast. I want people to be able to find you and your workshop. So, can you give us some information on that? And I'll put it in the description below so people can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. This was such a great conversation. So, I would love to connect with every single one of you guys. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. My handle is at Wendy Paige Sterling, and that's Wendy with the Y. Paige is Paige, Sterling spelled like silver. And I would love for each of you guys, if you feel or you felt something in what I spoke about, I would love to invite you guys to a complimentary call with me. You can go to contactwendy.com and you can book a complimentary session with me. I would love to learn more about you. And on that call, perhaps we can talk about something as simple as, where does your intuition speak to you? And I appreciate the time and for allowing me to share my wisdom today, Julia.
Thank you so much. And I just have loved getting to know you and becoming a friend of yours. And thank you for being on here.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I feel the same way.
Every week on the Growth and Grit podcast, we bring you real stories and practical tools to help you thrive through challenges. If this resonates with you, make sure you subscribe, follow, and share this podcast with someone who could use it too. It only takes a second, but it would mean the world to us, and it keeps you plugged in to fresh inspiration.